Have you ever wished you could build a fortress around your mind? A place so impenetrable that the judgments, words, and actions of others could never again find a way in to wound you? You feel yourself repeating the same cycles of pain, reacting to the world as if following a script you did not write. This constant sense of vulnerability is exhausting. You have been taught that this is a weakness to be overcome, a flaw to be armored against. This narrative positions you in a state of perpetual conflict with the external world, a battle you feel you are consistently losing, leaving you feeling powerless and confused. This frustration, however, is not a sign of personal failure. It is a symptom of a far deeper, universal human condition, a fundamental dissonance within the psyche itself. You are not broken, you are divided. The feeling of being a prisoner is accurate, but the prison is not external. Its walls were built within you. But this feeling of being adrift has a source, a hidden force operating from the depths of your own mind. It has a name and a structure, and understanding it is the first step toward true freedom. Today we are going to name it. Comment, "I seek my totality," to begin this journey. Act 2, the archetypal journey through the psyche. Seek 2, the guide and the map. To navigate this inner landscape, you require a guide, a cartographer of consciousness. This is the role of the philosopher Allan Watts, a master interpreter of the psyche's deep structures. Watts did not offer simple solutions or behavioral tricks. He offered a fundamental reorientation of the self. He understood that the perpetual feeling of being wounded by the world was not a problem to be solved externally, but a misperception to be corrected internally. He taught that the desperate search for a fortress is born from the illusion that you are a fragile, isolated ego adrift in a hostile universe. This skin-encapsulated ego, as he termed it, is the source of your suffering, a fictional character you have mistaken for your true identity. The journey to invulnerability, therefore, is not about reinforcing this character, but about seeing through its very construction. The path forward is not a set of rules to be memorized, but a series of profound recognitions about the nature of your own mind. You have been operating with an incomplete map, seeing only the small, well-lit territory of your conscious awareness while ignoring the vast, dark continent within. Watts provides the framework to understand this totality. He asserted that true security is not found in controlling the world, but in ceasing the internal civil war against the parts of yourself you have been taught to fear and reject. Your quest for a shield has been a distraction. The real work is to turn inward and explore the very territory from which you have been fleeing, for it is there, in the darkness, that the keys to your wholeness and unshakable peace are found. This exploration begins now, and it follows a structured path. We will descend into the architecture of your psyche, not as trespassers, but as architects seeking to understand the full blueprint of your being. Each step is a deliberate act of illumination, a turning of conscious attention toward what has been left in shadow. You will learn to see your pain not as a random assault, but as a perfectly calibrated compass needle, pointing directly toward the parts of your psyche that are crying out for integration. This is the beginning of the great work, the process of becoming what you truly are, a complete, undivided individual. The first step is not to build, but to dismantle the primary illusion that keeps you vulnerable and fragmented. Numbed Block 3, the antagonist revealed, the shadow. Before you can take a single step toward healing, you must name the true source of your conflict. The antagonist in your story is not your partner, your boss, or the judgment of society. The antagonist is an archetypal force operating from the deepest part of your own unconscious. In the psychological framework laid out by Carl Jung, this force has a name: the shadow. The shadow is the container, the psychic vessel, for every aspect of yourself that your conscious ego has rejected. It holds every impulse, desire, weakness, and strength that you have deemed unacceptable, immoral, or too dangerous to acknowledge. It is the repository of your disowned anger, your hidden grandiosity, your repressed fear, and your untapped creative power. You have spent a lifetime attempting to outrun this part of yourself, and this flight is the very source of your exhaustion and vulnerability. The shadow is not an evil entity to be vanquished. To declare war on your shadow is to declare war on your own totality, a battle you can never win. Its existence is what makes you perpetually vulnerable. When you deny a part of yourself, it does not disappear, it is projected outward onto the world. The arrogance you cannot stand in another person is a reflection of your own disowned ambition. The weakness that disgusts you in a friend is the echo of your own denied fragility. The world becomes a screen upon which your shadow plays out its dramas, and the actions of others become the triggers that detonate the repressed energy within you. You are not being hurt by them. You are being wounded by the collision with a disowned piece of your own soul. Understanding this redefines the entire problem. Your task is not to build a better fortress against the world. Your task is to turn and face this powerful, neglected part of your own being. The journey toward invulnerability is the journey of shadow integration. It is the process of consciously withdrawing those projections from the world and reclaiming the lost pieces of your own identity. The pain you feel is not a sign of your weakness, but a summons from the depths of your psyche. It is an invitation to end the internal civil war, to stop fighting a part of your own nature, and to begin the alchemical work of transforming this leaden suffering into the gold of a whole, integrated self. This is the central conflict you must resolve. Namaste Block 4, Step 1, Recognize the wounded identity. The first operational step in this journey is to identify precisely who it is that feels the sting of emotional pain. It is not your essential core self. The part of you that is so easily wounded is a construct, a carefully curated mask you present to the world for the purposes of social acceptance and survival. Jung termed this mask the persona. Your persona is the collection of traits you deem good, acceptable, and likable. It is your identity as a good employee, a caring partner, a strong individual. But because it is, by definition, an edited version of your total self, it is inherently fragile. It is a psychological facade, and like any facade, it is brittle and can be shattered by the slightest impact from the external world, revealing the emptiness behind it. When you feel hurt, what is actually happening is that an event or a comment has exposed a crack in this constructed identity. The pain is a psychic alarm bell, signaling a discrepancy between the mask you are wearing and the totality of who you are. Allan spoke of this as the fundamental anxiety of the ego, which must constantly work to maintain its own illusion of consistency and control. Your emotional vulnerability is a direct consequence of over-identifying with this fragile persona. You have mistaken the mask for your face, and so any criticism of the mask feels like a fundamental attack on your very being. To begin healing, you must create a space between your awareness and this constructed identity. You are not the mask. The pain is not an attack, but a message that the mask is failing. Therefore, your first practice is one of observation. When you feel that familiar sting of being judged, criticized, or dismissed, you must consciously shift your perspective. Instead of reacting from the position of the wounded persona, you must ask, what aspect of my constructed identity feels threatened right now? What belief about myself is being challenged? This act of conscious inquiry begins to dissolve the identification with the mask. It reframes pain from a personal assault into impersonal, vital data. It is the first step in reclaiming your power, transforming you from the victim of circumstance into the dispassionate observer of your own psychological processes. This is the foundation upon which all further integration is built. 9th, Block 5, Step 2, See the world as a mirror. With the understanding that it is the persona, not the self, that is wounded, you can proceed to the second great recognition. The world is not your aggressor, it is your mirror. The mechanism by which the psyche maintains the division between the persona and the shadow is called projection. Projection is the unconscious act of attributing your own unacknowledged and unaccepted qualities to other people. It is a defense mechanism designed to keep your self-image clean and consistent. If you have disowned your own anger, you will perceive the world as full of angry, aggressive people. If you have repressed your own vulnerability, you will be intensely critical of what you perceive as weakness in others. The world becomes a canvas for the rejected contents of your own unconscious mind. This is why certain people and situations have such a potent, almost magical power to hurt you. They are not merely people. They are carriers of your projections. The person whose arrogance infuriates you is not just arrogant. They are embodying a grandiosity that you have forbidden within yourself. The individual whose perceived incompetence triggers your frustration is mirroring back a fear of your own inadequacy that you refuse to confront. The emotional charge, the intensity of your reaction, is the definitive clue. It signals that you are not reacting to the objective reality of the person before you, but to the disowned part of yourself that they have unwittingly activated. They are messengers, delivering a telegram from your own shadow, and your pain is the content of that message. Your task, then, is to learn to read this mirror. When you experience a powerful emotional trigger, you must stop looking outward for the cause and start looking inward for the source. The critical question to ask is, what in this person is also in me that I have refused to see? This is a radical act of self-responsibility. It systematically dismantles the victim narrative that the ego prefers. It is no longer about them and what they did to you. It is about you and what they are showing you about yourself. By consciously withdrawing these projections, you take back the immense psychic energy that you have been leaking into the world. The hooks of others lose their grip, and you cease to be a puppet manipulated by the reflections of your own unexamined psyche. Honors Thor Block 6. Step 3. Cease the flight. The third step requires an act of profound courage. You must stop running. Your entire life has been organized around a central, unconscious project: the avoidance of the shadow. You have chosen careers, relationships, and habits specifically to keep these disowned parts of yourself hidden, both from the world and from your own conscious awareness. This constant flight, this perpetual management of your inner darkness, is the deep source of your anxiety and exhaustion. Allan Watts taught that the very effort to escape a negative experience is what chains you to it. By trying to run from your fear, you give it power over your direction. By trying to suppress your anger, you allow it to fester and control you from beneath the surface. The fortress you have been trying to build is not a sanctuary. It is a prison designed to contain a part of yourself. The path to healing, therefore, is a radical reversal of your life strategy. You must turn around and deliberately walk toward the very things you have been avoiding. This is the heroic phase of the journey of individuation. It is the conscious decision to stop resisting your own psychic reality. When feelings of inadequacy, envy, or rage arise, the old pattern is to distract, deny, or project them. The new path is to hold them in your conscious awareness without judgment. You must allow yourself to feel what you are feeling, fully and completely, recognizing it not as an enemy to be defeated, but as a vital part of your own energy system that has been starved of attention. This is not a passive surrender, it is an active and courageous embrace. This act of turning to face the shadow is the moment you begin to reclaim your power. As long as the shadow remains unconscious, it controls you from the outside, through the triggers and projections that make you vulnerable. When you bring the light of your conscious attention to it, you begin the process of integration. You are no longer running from a monster in the dark. You are initiating a dialogue with a lost part of your own soul. The energy that was previously locked up in repression and avoidance becomes available to you as fuel for creativity, vitality, and authentic self-expression. You cannot be whole while you are at war with yourself. To cease the flight is to sign the peace treaty and begin the work of reunification. Tommen Block 7, Step 4. Dismantle the moral judgment. The primary tool the ego uses to maintain its separation from the shadow is moralistic judgment. From a very early age, you were taught to categorize your internal experiences into two opposing camps: good and bad. Kindness, generosity, and calmness were labeled good, and you were encouraged to identify with them, forming your persona. Anger, selfishness, and fear were labeled bad, and you learned to repress, deny, and disown them, casting them into the darkness of the shadow. This internal schism, this moralistic dividing line, is the engine that powers your inner conflict. You believe you must exorcise the bad parts to be a good person, but in doing so, you have amputated vast portions of your own psychic strength and vitality, leaving yourself fragmented and defenseless. The fourth step in this alchemical process is to suspend this internal court of judgment. You must move beyond the simplistic binary of good and evil and begin to see your inner traits not as moral qualities, but as neutral forms of psychic energy. Anger is not bad. It is the raw energy required to set boundaries, protect yourself, and create change in the world. When repressed, it sours into resentment, bitterness, and passive aggression. Fear is not bad. It is the energy of self-preservation, an intelligent system designed to alert you to danger. When disowned, it morphs into chronic anxiety and paralysis. Even envy, the most taboo of emotions, is simply the energy of desire, pointing you towards something you value but feel you cannot attain. By removing the labels of good and bad, you neutralize the conflict. You can then approach these repressed energies with curiosity rather than condemnation. The question is no longer, how do I get rid of this bad feeling? But rather, what is the function of this energy? What is it trying to accomplish for me? How has its repression been sabotaging my life? This shift in perspective is profoundly liberating. It allows you to see that the shadow does not contain evil. It contains power. It is the raw, untamed, and potent energy of life itself. Your task is not to destroy it, but to learn how to relate to it consciously, to harness its power, and to integrate it into a more complete and formidable version of yourself. 9th to Salt Block 8. Step 5. Initiate the alchemical dialogue. Having ceased your flight and suspended judgment, you are now prepared for the 5th and most transformative step, the active integration of the shadow through conscious dialogue. This is the heart of the alchemical work. Alchemy was not about turning literal lead into gold, but about the symbolic transformation of the base, heavy, unconscious material of the psyche, lead, into the radiant, whole, and enlightened consciousness of the self, gold. This transformation is not achieved through force, but through a patient and deliberate process of inquiry and engagement. You must learn to speak to the parts of yourself that you have long silenced, and more importantly, you must learn to listen to their responses. This is a practical, internal discipline. This dialogue begins whenever you are emotionally triggered. When you feel the heat of anger, the grip of fear, or the shame of inadequacy, you must create a moment of internal space. Instead of immediately reacting or suppressing the feeling, you turn your attention inward and address the energy directly, as if it were a separate being within you. You ask it questions. What do you want? What are you afraid of? What do you need me to understand? You are not looking for an intellectual answer, but for a felt sense, an image, or a memory. You are giving the shadow a voice, allowing its needs and wisdom to emerge from the unconscious into the light of your awareness. This is the act of bringing consciousness to darkness. This process is the opposite of how you have been conditioned to operate. The ego's default is to analyze, control, and solve. This alchemical dialogue, however, is about relating, listening, and understanding. It is a gesture of profound self-compassion. You are treating the darkest parts of yourself not as problems to be fixed, but as lost children of your own psyche who need to be seen, heard, and welcomed home. Each time you engage in this internal dialogue, you are weaving a thread of consciousness between your ego and your shadow. Over time, these threads create a strong, integrated fabric. The lead of your unconscious suffering is slowly, patiently, and deliberately transformed into the gold of self-knowledge and unshakable inner peace. Tums Block 9. Step 6. Realize integration as invulnerability. The final step is not an action you take, but a state of being that emerges as a natural consequence of the previous 5. This is the culmination of the journey, the great revelation. True emotional invulnerability is not a fortress, it is wholeness. The entire project of building walls, of creating a hardened persona to defend against the world, was based on the false premise that you were fragmented and incomplete. The work of shadow integration systematically dismantles this premise by healing the fundamental schism within your psyche. As you reclaim your projections, embrace your disowned energies, and learn to dialogue with your inner depths, you are not building a better defense. You are dissolving the very need for one. You are becoming an undivided individual, the ultimate goal of the Jungian process of individuation. When you have integrated your shadow, the world loses its power to wound you. Another person's judgment is no longer a personal attack that shatters your fragile persona. It is simply information, data about their own internal state, and their own projections, which you can observe without being hooked. Their anger is no longer a threat that triggers your own repressed rage. It is simply the expression of their energy, which you can witness from a place of centered calm. You are no longer vulnerable because the hooks, the disowned parts of yourself that others could previously snag, have been dissolved. You have taken them back into yourself, and in doing so, you have become psychologically solid. You are no longer a house divided against itself. This is the ultimate freedom Allan spoke of. It is not an escape from life or its difficulties, but a radical embrace of your full reality. A whole psyche does not need a fortress because it is its own sanctuary. It does not feel the need to defend a small, contested territory of goodness because it has claimed the entire landscape of its being, both the light and the dark. A mountain is not hurt by the wind and the rain. It simply experiences them as part of its existence. Similarly, an integrated individual is not hurt by the emotional weather of the world. They feel it, they experience it, but it does not threaten their fundamental integrity. You came seeking rules to never be hurt again, but you leave with the truth. To become whole is to become unbreakable. You came to this place seeking rules to build a fortress, a way to armor your heart against the wounds of the world. You leave understanding a far more profound truth. The war you are fighting was never with others, but a civil war waged within the borders of your own psyche. The pain was not an attack from the outside, but a distress signal from within, a cry from the disowned parts of your soul demanding to be seen. You have now been given the map to this inner landscape and the key to its reunification. The exhausting, lifelong project of defending a fragile persona is over. A new work has begun, not of building walls, but of dissolving the internal borders that kept you fragmented, vulnerable, and at war with your own totality. The tools for this great alchemical work are now in your possession. You have learned to see the world not as an aggressor, but as a mirror reflecting the hidden contents of your own unconscious. You understand that emotional triggers are not random assaults, but precise signposts pointing toward the shadow, the repository of your untapped power and unacknowledged truth. The path forward is no longer a flight from pain, but a courageous turning toward, an embrace of the very energies you were taught to fear. This is the essence of becoming an individual, undivided, whole, and coherent. You no longer need to be a victim of your own unexamined reactions. You can now become the conscious, dispassionate observer and integrator of your own psychic energy, the true architect of your inner world. This is not an end, but a fundamental beginning. The journey of individuation is not a destination to be reached, but a lifelong practice of conscious attention and courageous self-reclamation. Each day will present new opportunities to practice this new way of being, to recognize the wounded persona, to withdraw your projections from the world, and to initiate the dialogue with the depths of your own being. The goal is not to achieve a state of emotionless perfection, but to cultivate an unshakable inner center from which you can experience all of life's emotional weather without losing yourself to the storm. Your totality awaits you, not in some distant future, but in the consistent moment-to-moment choice to turn inward and integrate what you find there with awareness and compassion. You now possess the understanding that true invulnerability is not a shield, but a state of wholeness. A complete psyche does not require a fortress. It is its own sanctuary. The peace you sought from the world can only be found by ending the war within yourself. If this message resonated with your quest for self-knowledge, subscribe to the channel to deepen your journey into the architecture of the mind. Share this knowledge with another who needs to find their own path toward integration. And continue to explore the depths, for the greatest adventure is the discovery of the total self. The work is yours to do. Begin now.